announced that WNBA TV ratings are down more than 50% since Caitlin Clark's injury, and it was also reported that the Indiana Fever television viewership is also down over 53%. Now, I know a lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire
The WNBA has reached its breaking point, and behind closed doors, the commissioner is in full-blown panic mode. Sources say a desperate, unmistakable message has been relayed to two of the league's most recognizable stars: get them back, at any cost. It's a demand that seems almost unbelievable until you understand the storm that's been quietly building beneath the surface. This isn't just another sports controversy. This is a slow, dangerous unraveling of a league that spent decades clawing for legitimacy, only to find itself now clinging to survival. At the center of it all, two players, bodies broken, trust shattered, and a league leadership scrambling to repair a system that may already be beyond saving. The injury that cracked the foundation when Caitlin Clark went down with a season-ending injury, it wasn't just a blow to her team. It was a brutal reality check for the entire WNBA. What followed wasn't speculation. It was maths. Ticket sales cratered, television ratings nosedived, and it became painfully obvious the Clark effect was the last piece of duct tape holding the entire operation together. Before her injury, the Indiana Fever were selling out arenas in nearly every city they visited. Average attendance had skyrocketed from just over 4,000 in 2023 to more than 17,000 per game. TV ratings had jumped 170% compared to the previous season. Her jersey shattered every league record. Major sponsors who had never once written a check for the WNBA were suddenly throwing seven-figure deals just to associate with her name. And then, in one sickening instant, it was gone. Midway through a meaningless third-quarter drive, Clark collapsed after planting her foot awkwardly. The replay was horrifying. The crowd went silent. Within minutes, everyone knew the season was over. But what they didn't realize, at least not right away, was that Clark's absence might also mark the end of the WNBA's golden moment before it ever really began. Panic at the top inside the league office, the mood turned apocalyptic. Networks begged for updates, hoping to dangle a playoff return to keep ratings afloat. Insiders leaked anonymous messages to sports journalists, urging them to publish speculative pieces about a miracle comeback. Season ticket holders flooded team offices demanding refunds. TV executives started calling emergency meetings. Marketing contracts were quietly renegotiated to reflect post-Clark viewership projections. One former exec summed it up bluntly: it was a house of cards. And Caitlin's injury was the gust of wind. But the real chaos wasn't just about one superstar's absence. The real chaos was what the injury exposed: a deep, festering rift between players and leadership that had been growing for years. The comment that sparked a civil war, the league's internal crisis, exploded during a mid-season meeting when Commissioner Cathy Engelbert allegedly made a stunningly tone-deaf comment about Clark's off-court earnings. In a room full of star players discussing marketing rights and revenue sharing, Engelbert reportedly said Clark should be grateful for the WNBA platform, implying her estimated $28 million in endorsements from Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm were only possible because of the league. The room went silent. "It was the most insulting thing I've ever heard a commissioner say," one player later told reporters. "It showed a total misunderstanding of how star power works," said another. Clark wasn't in the room, but when word reached her camp, the response was swift. Her team began exploring options abroad. European clubs, alternative leagues, private investment-backed startups, nothing was off the table. She had been loyal. She had carried the league on her shoulders. And now, the league's own leadership was subtly implying she owed them. It was the last straw. The fragile illusion of growth on the surface, the WNBA had appeared to enter a renaissance. Record ratings, sold-out arenas, bigger media deals. But underneath, the foundation was brittle. The league had bet everything on one moment, one player, one rise. And when Caitlin Clark went down, it exposed just how dangerously thin that bet really was. Now, behind the scenes, the commissioner's office is trying to put the pieces back together. But the damage may be done. The stars have seen behind the curtain. They know their worth. And they know there are other leagues, paying more, respecting more, offering more, waiting to welcome them with open arms. So the question now isn't just whether Caitlin Clark will return. The real question is whether the WNBA, as we know it, can survive if she doesn't. That one dismissive comment sparked an all-out explosion. Players who'd stayed silent through past controversies suddenly found their voices. Social media lit up with blistering critiques of Engelbert's leadership. Former stars, now overseas, quietly questioned why the league seemed bent on undermining its own. The WNBA's carefully managed public facade was cracking in real time. And then came the most dramatic turn. Sophie Cunningham, already sidelined for the season by injury, transformed overnight into the league's fiercest critic. She didn't tiptoe. She waged war. In a Twitter tirade spanning over 2 hours and 30-plus posts, Cunningham launched a full-scale assault on Engelbert's record. She called her the most delusional leader our league has ever seen, adding a brutal kicker: "People only know Cathy because of C." This wasn't a passing rant. It was a strategic, uncompromising manifesto. She tore into Engelbert's tenure, declining attendance before Clark's era, botched marketing strategies, failed TV deals, and missed cultural moments. She reminded the world, we've had generational talents before. Olympic champions, MVPs, the league always found a way to fumble the opportunity. Now we have someone who broke through despite the system, not because of it, and suddenly the leadership acts like they created her. It's insulting. It's delusional. It's exactly why we're in this mess. The response from fans was immediate and fierce. "The Engelbert must go" trended nationally. Sports Talk shows devoted deep dives to Cunningham's statements. Major outlets that rarely covered the WNBA were forced to pick sides. The league issued a bland, respect everyone's voice statement, only fueling more fire for its emptiness. But this wasn't just a reactionary moment. The drama had roots in past disputes. Accusations resurfaced, part of a lawsuit alleging a smear campaign. The claim: after Cunningham requested a trade, rumors were spread by her former organization that linked her to a relationship with a married CEO. She denied them vehemently, denouncing the allegations as coordinated efforts to silence a player who dared to speak out. Court filings revealed that team executives allegedly discussed managing Sophie's narrative after she reported misconduct in facilities and coaching staff behavior. Emails and texts were submitted as evidence. The story ran wild. Anonymous leaks to gossip outlets magnified tension, conflicts, locker room drama, and favoritism. Cunningham responded publicly: "They're trying to destroy my reputation, but all they're really doing is proving my point. This league doesn't know how to handle strong women who refuse to stay in their lane. They want us to be stars, but only if we say thank you and stay quiet. The moment we speak truth to power, they try to break us down." Amid all that noise, the WNBA's silence was telling. Their response to the lawsuit was muted, leading many to speculate: are league officials complicit or too terrified to act? Either way, the message was clear. No one speaks that loudly within these walls and walks away unscathed. At the highest levels of the organization, dysfunction runs deep. But the darkest whispers all point back to Caitlin Clark's devastating injury. Insiders claim that the Fever's front office, and the league itself, were so obsessed with box office numbers that they pushed their star to return to the court far too soon, turning what might have been a minor issue into a catastrophic, season-ending problem. Medical insiders paint a troubling picture. Clark had been battling persistent lower body soreness for weeks before the injury that ultimately sidelined her. Team doctors reportedly recommended rest and a lighter practice schedule, but with ticket sales soaring and national TV appearances lined up, the pressure to keep her playing was immense. Everyone knew she was playing hurt. One anonymous source revealed the trainers knew it, the coaches knew it, the front office knew it, but nobody wanted to be the one to sit her down and risk losing all that revenue. So they kept shooting her up with pain meds and sending her back out until her body finally gave out. Text messages obtained through Freedom of Information requests reveal executives strategizing on how to manage Clark's availability while maximizing her playing time during prime ESPN broadcasts. In one damning exchange, a team exec wrote, "We can rest her in the offseason. Right now, we need her in uniform for the ESPN games." Now, the commissioner's frantic demand to get Clark back on the court is widely seen as a plea to put the league's biggest revenue generator's body back on the line for TV ratings and ticket sales. Critics argue that no male athlete would be pressured to rush back under these circumstances. The WNBA's desperation to capitalize on Clark's star power may have already cost them their most valuable asset. Clark's camp has stayed mostly silent amid injury rumors, though her agent issued a carefully worded statement emphasizing that Caitlin's health and long-term career come first, and that any return decisions will be made solely by her and her medical team, with zero input from league or team business interests. The message was clear: trust has been broken, and it won't be easily repaired. Adding fuel to the fire, Sophie Cunningham further stoked controversy by throwing shade at the league's newest expansion cities. During a podcast, she openly questioned whether Detroit and Cleveland offered the off-court lifestyle players actually want, pointing to flashier cities like Miami instead. "Look, I get that we need to grow the game," Cunningham said, "but let's be real about what players want. We're not basketball robots. We have lives outside the arena. We want culture, nightlife, restaurants, and things to do. When you pick expansion cities, you gotta ask, do players want to live there for 6 months out of the year? Detroit and Cleveland have amazing fans and great basketball culture, but are they where a 25-year-old athlete making league minimum wants to spend their summer? Probably not. Meanwhile, you've got Miami, Las Vegas, and Nashville, places players will be excited to go. But the league keeps overlooking those markets because of some old-school thinking about traditional sports cities. The backlash was swift and fierce. Media in Detroit and Cleveland roasted Cunningham mercilessly. Local politicians labeled her comments elitist and disrespectful. Fan groups launched social media campaigns condemning her attitude. The WNBA issued another bland statement expressing appreciation for all host cities and player perspectives. Yet behind the scenes, other players quietly admitted Cunningham had a point. Several veterans told reporters anonymously that city desirability heavily influences free agency choices and trade demands. Agents confirmed lifestyle factors regularly drive player market preferences, not just basketball fit. Classic Sophie, saying what everyone else thinks but few dare voice, making herself impossible to ignore and adding yet another headline to the league's growing drama. In the ruthless economics of modern sports media, controversy equals attention, and attention equals value, even if league leadership would never admit it. The commissioner's desperate plea to get these stars back on the court isn't about basketball. It's about cold, hard economics. This is a frantic public acknowledgement, without the controversy, and the unparalleled star power of Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. The WNBA faces an existential crisis. These two players have driven more headlines and drawn more viewers than anyone else this season. Now, let's confront the brutal financial reality. Television contracts are up for renegotiation next year, and current projections warn that without Clark and Cunningham boosting viewership, the league could lose as much as 40% of its broadcast revenue. Sponsors who signed on specifically to leverage Clark's rising brand are already eyeing exit clauses in their agreements. Season ticket renewals for the upcoming season are tracking nearly 30% below projections across multiple markets. The league's entire business model for the next decade was built on the assumption that the Clark effect would continue to fuel exponential growth in fan interest, merchandise sales, and corporate partnerships. Without her on the court, and with Cunningham sidelined and actively clashing with league leadership, that model has collapsed. The WNBA now faces a very real possibility, slipping back to pre-Clark attendance and revenue levels, a catastrophic scenario given the league's increased operational costs and salary commitments made during the boom years. Insiders report emergency board meetings have been convened to discuss contingency plans. Options on the table reportedly include drastic cost-cutting, potential contraction of struggling franchises, and most dramatically, talks with international leagues about mergers or partnerships to stabilize finances. The league is hemorrhaging money right now, one team owner told reporters on condition of anonymity. "We built infrastructure and made commitments based on projections that Caitlin Clark would be playing for the next decade. Now she's hurt. She doesn't trust league leadership, and her teammate is actively trying to burn the whole thing down. We're in serious trouble." This desperation has led to increasingly surreal proposals. One suggestion gaining traction involves offering Clark and Cunningham unprecedented profit-sharing deals and guaranteed marketing partnerships in exchange for their return and public backing of league leadership. Another proposal envisions creating a special star player designation with separate salary rules and benefits designed specifically to retain marquee talent. But the core problem remains: you can't force injured players to play, and you can't rebuild broken trust with money alone. As news of the commissioners get them back on directive leaked, other WNBA players began weighing in, revealing just how fractured the league has become. Veterans who fought for years for better conditions and pay voiced frustration that it took Clark's arrival for the league to suddenly care about star power and player welfare. "Where was this energy when we were playing in college gyms?" one MVP asked rhetorically. "Where was this urgency when we were flying commercial and making $60,000 a year? Now that their golden goose is hurt, suddenly it's a crisis." Younger players, especially those who join alongside or after Clark, express sympathy for both stars, but openly question why they should trust leadership seemingly more focused on short-term revenue than on building sustainable systems that protect player health and autonomy. "I'm watching what they're doing to Caitlin and Sophie and thinking about my own career," said a second-year player. "If they pressure the league's biggest star to play hurt, what will they do to me? If they allow smear campaigns against someone who speaks up, what happens when I have a complaint?" This crisis is bigger than two players. It's about whether the league's athletes can trust those running the league at all. The Players Association released a statement supporting Clark and Cunningham, emphasizing that player health and autonomy must never be compromised for business interests and that retaliation against players who speak out is unacceptable. While stopping short of calling for Commissioner Engelbert's resignation, the statement made clear that player confidence in league leadership is an all-time low. Sensing blood in the water, sports media have unleashed unprecedented coverage of the WNBA's internal chaos. Major outlets that once barely acknowledged the league are now running daily updates on the controversy, and talk radio shows are debating whether Engelbert should step down.